an Empire Boxing and Unlearning Network production.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Empire Boxing's podcast. Today is an extremely special episode for a number of reasons. One, I have a friend of mine on that most of you are probably just starting to see his face coming into the limelight. So I think your career has been really exciting, and I've obviously been following you since we met, but I think a lot of people now are going to start to know your face very closely. So we're going to dive into that. Everyone, this is Taylor Ramsdell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And what makes this so special too is that, we've done a lot of fighters, we've done their coaches, but Taylor is a strength and conditioning coach. And when we first met at the Muscle Farm gym, correct me if I'm wrong, you were mostly coaching mixed martial artists.
At that time, perhaps, but I started mixed MMA and boxing right around the same time. I started training MMA fighters. My first fighters were in like 2009 and maybe towards the end of 2009, and it was early 2010, maybe even late 2009 that I started training boxing too. So it's basically around the same time. It's just the first people that came and started working with me were MMA.
Wicked. Now I have so many questions, and I want people to know you, and I want people to know what you do. But I think it's really cool to note that, you guys just had a major victory on your team, and Taylor, it happens to be Dmitry Bivol's strength and conditioning coach. And we just had a massive defeat. I say we as if I'm part of the team.
You're part of the team. Let's go. Yeah, you're on. Let's go. Yeah.
Against Canelo-Bivol, and that was just like, it was incredible to see. And I think the most important thing for me, being I would say a nerd, a little bit of a nerd in like the S&C world, is peak performance at the highest level, taking someone from 80% to 90%, 90% to 100%, like within the top 5%. That's not by accident. That's not random fitness ideas of things you saw on the internet. Right. There is a serious science and system behind that. And when I've been talking to some of their, our up and coming athletes and their coaching and just kind of testing the waters of what they're practicing in their camps, it's interesting for people, I think, to note the difference between staying fit and getting results at a lower level, an up and coming level, right, and then what it takes to be in the top 5% in the world. Yeah. And that is the most fascinating part of this for me. And I think that you're just going to blow people's minds. So I'm super excited to chat with you.
Well, to say, I hope not to disappoint.
Hell yeah. Not at all. So let's start with your superhero origin story. Okay. Talk to us about, where were you born? When did you first get into S&C, or like how that evolved in your own personal life?
Okay. So born and raised in Springfield, Missouri. As far as training, we'll just jump to whenever I became a trainer. I first got certified in 2003. In 2003, I was going to Arizona State in school, and it was just a job. It was just kind of a fun job. I went to the gym a lot. I was always in sports growing up, and so I just kind of knew that, and I helped people out with workouts and stuff. I was like, well, I might as well get paid for it. So I got it as a part-time job, and that's how I treated it. And then I always was kind of making a little bit of noise in the gym, doing things kind of, I don't want to say outside the box, but just doing things a little bit differently. And everybody was always like, oh, you should open a gym, blah, blah, blah. And I never wanted to take what I was doing just for fun and make it into a real job. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to make it work. So I was always a trainer. I was a trainer when I graduated school. I was a trainer. I started law school for a little bit. I'd always go back to being a trainer. And it wasn't until I moved to LA in 2009 that I really became a full-time, I opened a gym and I became a full-time trainer. And the reason why I finally did that is I started thinking, well, why not do something that I love and have fun, and why not make it work? So I just kind of shifted my way of thinking. And that's so I trained, general population, some athletes here and there. But then when I moved to LA in 2009, that's when I started training the fighters. And that just came through a friend of mine actually owned a fight gym, or he had a fight team. He wanted me to start working with some of his people. So he sent them to me. They did a really good job. They started seeing success. Then I got a boxer he saw a lot of success. Managers saw it, and it was just the snowball and just kept going. And that was since 2009. So from 2003 to 2009, it was kind of like a part-time thing here and there that I was go back to. And then from 2009 to now, it's all day, every day.
Right. And then when you were kind of younger, you said you're growing up in sports, like as soon as you were, like a young man, were you like, man, okay, I can lift weights? And were you into like trying out different strength programs and using your body as sort of a tool of experiment? Like I know that generally that's kind of how it starts.
Yeah.
Like what was your experience as a young guy kind of growing up, learning your body and playing sports?
So my experience growing up was I got into the gym because I was a really small guy. Like I was really little, I was in sports, and I was always the littler guy, but I was always very aggressive. And I would go lift weights because I wanted to get bigger. Like in high school, I used to eat 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every night before bed because I wanted to gain weight, and I just couldn't. So then
the good old days.
Oh my God, yeah. Now if I did that, like, but I'm 41 years old. But so what happened with my being in the gym? Actually, my freshman year, I was in all sports, and then I was a very competitive soccer player. We traveled the country, we went all over the place, and it was a big deal. My age group where I was from, we had a lot of incredible talent. One of my close friends went on to the MLS. He was captain of the Portland Timbers. They won the MLS Cup, all this stuff. So like we had a lot of talent. So at my high school, going from my freshman to sophomore year, a lot of the guys that I grew up with, friends and stuff, they were going to play varsity. The coach told my parents or told me or something that I was too small to play varsity. So I had a chip on my shoulder. I quit playing soccer. I started playing football. And so that's just kind of the way. So then whenever I got into football, like I really started lifting weights and tried because I really wanted to put on size. So I saw what can happen in the gym if you work hard and do it. Because I went from the pants not fitting me my sophomore year. And also like I was a late bloomer. But so my sophomore year, I started playing football. Didn't know anything what I was doing. Like my mom bought me some book from like Barnes and Noble, like how to play football. And it was like pictures. I mean, it was just embarrassing to me. And now I look back, I was like, that's fucking awesome.
Right. Football
literally, but it was like a 70s, like 1970s book, and like they're like blocking like this, and it's just not how you're supposed to do it. But so I knew nothing.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. And then by my senior year, I was captain of the team. I went on to play Division I AA, but I ended up quitting because football and doing stuff of any seriousness at that time in my life, I really was more into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So I did that in Arizona. So I quit playing sports, moved to Arizona, learned how not to live, but still graduated. And that's when I actually became a trainer. And that's a whole other story. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah. I just kind of skipped over that.
Okay.
Woo!
I want to start another whole podcast that's just called Bad Decisions and like how not to die or something.
Exactly. I could fill it up.
Oh man, I feel like we wouldn't have a shortage of guests on bad decisions and how not to die. Wicked. Okay, so you ended up kind of dabbling in the strength world because you had feedback that you were too small to play sports. And then what at that time was your biggest inspiration for lifting? Like what was there, apart from that book that your mom gave us, shout out Mom. Apart from that, what was your biggest inspiration at the time? I
just wanted to get bigger. I just wanted to get bigger. That was it, literally. And honestly, like I got stronger and I grew, but I was never a big guy. Like it was more building confidence and like learning what I can do. Right. You know what I mean? And it was the building of the confidence that I felt I got the most out of from going to the gym.
When you started training some of these athletes, these MMA, fighters and, boxers, transitioning from gen pop into performance, it's a pretty serious transition. So what did you do at the time to sort of elevate your game?
So at the time, like I'm brutally honest, at the time, like I was in strength and conditioning, basically the very like beginning with the boxing, like when I came into boxing, there wasn't that many strength and conditioning coaches. So you kind of come in, it was kind of frowned upon, like, oh, another one of these guys. Like I've had 20 world champions, never had strength and conditioning. So I kind of didn't have to like prove my worth, but I just worked with the guys. They continued to do well, and that grew. But what I did was one of my guys, Victor Henry, who's actually in the UFC now. Every time I see him now, I'm like, the only thing we didn't do to you was catch you on fire. Like, because like I did, all this stuff back in it. I've learned everything to do right from doing everything wrong. I did the gas mask training, because back in the day, it was like for MMA strength and conditioning, it was basically just a really fucking hard circuit. Like, you know, like you would do one thing and then you jump to another thing, and it was all like sport specific, meant that it looked like a fight. But that's not right. Like that's not how it should be. You know, and there are still some that do it out there, and that's fine, but it's just bad for your body. So that was like the beginning of it. So I learned, to kind of answer your question, the way that I transitioned to it was I just started experimenting. I read a lot of books. I researched it, you know, and I saw what the other people were doing. And I studied the body. I studied the sport. And then I did a bunch of stuff. I mean, they did great. I mean, he performed very well. He continued to win or whatever, you know. But from that, I was able to kind of funnel in the stuff that works and get rid of the stuff that doesn't work, you know. And that was 10, 11, God, I'm old, 13, 14 years ago. So the amount that I've grown as far as knowledge is tremendous. And I know that I still have so much more to learn. Like every camp we're learning, learning.
Yeah. And so some of those early guys really ended up being like the guinea pigs for you honing your methods, your practice. So great. I love it. So, your first MMA camp, in the UFC, were you nervous? Or had you kind of figured out your strategy by then?
No, it's never, I don't want to say nervous. I mean, there's like that little bit of, I mean, you talk about like being in the zone. Like if you're just completely like Joe Cool, it's too much. If you're really nervous, it's too much. Like it's kind of in between there. So it's like a positive excitement, like a good feeling to make sure that you're always performing at your best. Because when you're training somebody, you're also performing, because you have to get them to do the next thing, or you make sure that everything is run correctly. But as far as being nervous, I mean, watching my guys fight, like I'm very confident in what they're going to do, but it's always hard to watch, you know, because it's like you're completely out of control. We say team this, team that. When they get in the ring or when the cage door closes, whether it's MMA or boxing, they're in there. It's them. It's them and the opponent. You know what I mean? And now we're here just for verbal support, verbal coaching, emotional support, whatever it may be. But you're just completely out of control. So it's like everything we've done, if we've done the work, hopefully it all works out. And so that can be nerve-wracking. But as far as the camp and all that stuff, no, not at all. Because I think also a lot of trainers, like I just go from, I mean, I always have a plan. There's always a plan. But from that plan, like I've never had a camp go exactly according to plan. I don't even know if I've ever had a session go exactly according to plan. And that's something like, if new trainers or old trainers or whatever listening to learn, is like, I call them clipboard trainer. If you're a clipboard trainer and it's here, right here, that's fine. Carry a clipboard, but be able to change that. You know what I mean? Like if I have a full day where we're going to do contrast trainers or some explosive work or whatever, and you mentioned Dmitry Bivol, and he comes in and he looks tired that day. Like, guess what we're not going to do? We're not going to do anything that I had planned. We might just stretch, and that's okay. You know what I mean? So it's, to answer your question, I just went on a bunch of tangents, but to answer your question, for camp, no, never nervous, just because I know what I'm doing, you know, and I believe in what I'm doing, and I know that adjustments can be made as we go. So even if we do something like that didn't work, I know we can change it.
And I think like adaptability is a huge part of that too. And your athletes doing it as much as you are. And there's a really interesting, like what you just said was really interesting. You know, he comes in looking some kind of way. Like that's what the Gen Pop didn't understand. You know, they are, I think, you know, no pain, no gain, no days off, no quit, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like there's actually phases to this, and each phase is meant to achieve something. And we're dealing with, especially at a high level, like it's a game of recoveries. Who's recovering better? Whose nervous system, like whose CNS isn't fucking fried off? And, you know, whose systems and processes are working, you know, as they should. But that's a game of adaptability. And sometimes, you know, your athlete's going to walk in the gym and you're like,
the only workouts you can get any progress from are the ones you can recover from, you know?
Absolutely. And do you abide by that sort of 70% rule? Like most of your athletes training is kind of done in that 70 to 75% intensity with like,
I see what you're saying. I mean,
sprinkled in.
I don't go by like the exact numbers. I mean, they used to call it like PRE, like perceived rate of exertion. It's just, if you know your athlete, you know, like I used to do a lot of heart rate monitoring and things. and I look exactly, but now like I get a feel for it, like talk to them between rounds, see how their recovery is. And
Right.
that's just from years of doing it. If I find that if I'm missing the mark, then yeah, then I'll hone it in on that stuff. You know what I mean? Because like I said, we're always learning. We're always, like you said, adapting, and that's in each camp. What was the other thought I had when you were talking about the 70-30? I don't know. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
It really comes down to like maximum recoverable volume, right? It's just like, what can the athlete handle? What is the maximum amount of training they can handle and recover so that you can get the results?
And that
from
was
their
it too.
performance?
Right now, I worked with Cecilia Bracas a little bit, the female boxer. She was the first undisputed champion in female boxing, and she just started camp in Big Bear, and I just talked to her today, and she was traveling a lot. And like what I told her, a lot of times it's always like, go hard, whatever. Like my thing to her was, after traveling, like make sure that you allow yourself enough rest for the camp, because she's doing great. She's in peak condition. She's doing excellent. Make sure that after traveling, you rest. And most coaches are like, go, go, go. Not most coaches, but like you said, the gym pop, like it's all like go hard. A lot of it for my guys, like for the pros, people assume that everything is like kill, kill, kill. A lot of times it's not. A lot of people ask me like, how much do they run? And like a little bit. And it depends on the fighter. It depends on the person. Some fighters are runners. Some aren't. Some run a couple miles.
Well, it depends on on the weight class too, right?
The person, really, because, and also the boxing coach too, because sometimes sprints can be sprints outside by running, sprints can be sprints on a heavy bag. It all depends on kind of how the way the camp is run.
Totally. And the adaptability to injuries too, because if it's like lactic capacity that we're after, like running like sprinting up a hill or on the track is not the only way to achieve that. Like that could be assault bike, that could be rower, like you said, a heavy bag sprint. So what I would love, if you're cool, kind of like giving us a little bit of the Taylor secret sauce, is walk us through like, even you don't even have to like go into super details of like specific athletes, but walk us through like 8 weeks. Like, do you usually do like 8 weeks, 12 weeks? Walk us through what a camp looks like.
Well, first of all, there's really no, secret sauce. What's the saying? Like everybody, if you have the same recipe, it's going to be different. What's the saying? The recipe is, train hard, train smart. But as far as the how long a camp is, that also depends, because fighting is a business. So sometimes you might have 7-8 weeks. Sometimes you might have 4. So it all depends on how the business is going, where the person is at. I've had fighters come in and we've had fight camps, and then I've had other fighters come in. I'm like, this isn't a fight camp. This is just fat camp. Like, you haven't been training. We have 2 weeks. All you're doing is losing weight. You know what I mean? So there's difference. But in a perfect world, like, I would like to be working with somebody year round. And then the difference whenever camp starts, it's more so adjusting the focus and the way that I do the training. So my secret sauce, we can just Dmitry Bivol. We'll talk about his camp, and there are no big secrets. So for him, Monday, Wednesday, Friday are kind of like the heavy days, because Monday, Wednesday, Friday he spars and he works with me as well. Mondays and Wednesdays we do more strength type training, but the way that I do my training, because you only have so much time, so you have to be efficient, you have to reduce the amount of risk as far as injuries go and all of this. So I do a lot of both contrast training and then over speed training. So with contrast training, you are working both. So power equals force times velocity. Okay, so there's 3. There's power, there's force, there's velocity. If you increase any one of them, you're increasing the whole formula for power. Because everybody's like, how do you train for power? First of all, the best way to train for power is if you're born with it. But then if you're not, and you're training with it, so the way you can train these things is like force is strength training, is whenever you're pushing against gravity, and in whatever way you're producing force, that is going to increase power because it's part of that formula. Velocity is one thing that a lot of people might miss the bar on, because that's the speed aspect. So a good example, like a perfect scenario for velocity training, would be doing a sprint downhill. What happens if you sprint downhill? You're going to bust your ass. You know what I mean? So you can't sprint downhill. So there are ways that, what's something that everybody has seen, like band assisted jumps. So where you're holding the band and you're springing way up in the sky. Yeah. So that would be working the velocity thing. So the camp, Monday and Wednesday is more of that stuff, the strength, resting in between, we're building muscle. Then Fridays, we usually do a little bit of sprinting at the end. It's kind of a sprint day. But even then, it's short. As you get closer to the fight, trying to think easy ways to explain it. So think of the volume in the beginning is really high and the intensity is low. And then as you get closer and closer to the fight, it's kind of the intensity increases and the volume gets smaller. So right before the end, it's like we're at the highest intensity, but the lowest volume. And the lowest volume can be duration of a session, or it may be just the amount of work that you do. So those are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, usually boxing with the coach. Thursday is kind of a light, easy day. Feels like running, maybe a jog, maybe a walk, maybe not. Saturday is a longer run. And that's it. That's it. There's not, and that's the formula that many people use. A lot of boxing is 3 days a week you spar. Some camps spar almost every day, but that's what we do. And then what we do during those sessions, what the boxing coach does with him during the boxing sessions, during the sparring, that all changes. How many rounds he's doing, etc.
Wicked. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. Like, explaining that as much to the fans as possible is just giving people an understanding of the phases of that, like kind of like you were saying, like the volume and intensity and how that scales closer to the fight. Kind of as you're a couple of weeks out, you're getting into speed strength work. It's exactly like keeping the reps really low and moving it as quickly as possible. For example, like said load. Now, what do you do for your taper week? What is that
like? You're talking about the week before, like fight week? Okay, so fight week, we just do really light work. We break some sweats, maybe light jogs. It depends on how the weight goes. If we're talking about him specifically, he doesn't really do a weight cut. I mean, like everybody, he's a very small, light heavyweight. But for other fighters, it's more skill work, and it is making sure you properly warm up, because if you are dehydrated, you're at higher risk for other things happening. So proper warm up for MMA, you're there doing striking, wrestling, or jiu-jitsu, whoever is there with you. And it's just really light work. And that is really the training during fight week. It's the light work on the mitts, shadow boxing, and it's true tapering. The hard stuff, the hard training is done. Fight week is more interviews, photos, etc. And if you're needing to make weight, it's making weight, which everybody has to make weight, but some have to do more than others.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another question for you. What sort of, who do you work in conjunction with, like in terms of recovery? Do you have an RMT that works with you guys, a physiotherapist that you work in conjunction with? How do you address the recovery with yourself? Is there someone that's part of your team?
So for Bivol, he has a guy's name's Ilya, and he is a massage therapist, and he's a doctor, all this stuff. So he does massage and stretching. So almost every day, he gets a massage or stretched or whatever it is. So that is a huge addition. I mean, that's very, very beneficial. Most, and there's different levels, you know what I mean? So most, though, up and comers, like people will work a deal out with like a local massage therapist. And it's a lot of times it's the social media day and age. So like, they're working with a fighter. So the fighter may get sponsored by them. But I am a huge advocate. I don't have one specific person for everybody else, but if somebody can find a massage therapist, that either it would be great if they could just pay them, but if not, work out some sort of deal with them, because it's so important. It's so important to let your body recover, even if it's just like one time a week, but minimum one time a week. Other than that, the only thing that really helps recovery is making sure you're hydrated and time. Epsom salt baths I found are great. The ice baths take away a little bit of inflammation. And it just feels really good. As far as the science goes behind it, I don't know. When people talk about like, well, what's the science? I'm like, have you tried it? And they say, yeah. I said, did you feel good after? They say, yeah. I said, it fucking worked. You know what I mean? Or like, I didn't feel anything. Well, it didn't work for you. It's like acupuncture. Like people swear by it. Science says what. So it's finding what works for the person. So there is no like one right way. I think when people get locked into that one right way, they get stuck. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that point too about, yes, the science, it is super important. And everyone seems to be like hot on that, like, oh, the science. I'm like, did it make you feel good? did like or throw it if it's scientifically proven and it didn't make you feel good, throw it out the
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It can
like,
go both ways. I mean, obviously, you need to have the science behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you have to train smart. And
Yes.
nowadays, anybody that's in the world has a basic knowledge. Like as a coach, like I need to have more knowledge. Yes. But at the end of the day, also, it just needs to be understood by the fighter. I'm a big advocate of the fighter knowing why I'm having them do what we're doing. Because if you know why, and that's anything like, if you know why is he making me do this shit, it makes you do it better because you realize, oh, this is because I need to work on this, or this is going to help me do this, or whatever it may be. Yes. So I don't over explain, but I keep it really simple. And Dima is one of those, he's one of those that like, he likes to know what's going on. So making sure that they know why, the why. Like it's if you can't explain why, then you shouldn't have somebody do it. Like if I'm going to do those band assisted jumps because they look cool on Instagram and you have somebody doing it and the guy says, why are we doing this? And you're like, I don't know. You shouldn't fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Well, one, it creates a deeper buy-in for the athletes. So the athletes bought in because they have an understanding of why it applies to them. Why is this important for me? But then two, to your point, you get a lot of these, Instagram trainers or whatever. And the follow-up question that everyone loves to use is explosive. Well, it makes you explosive. I'm like, you're just saying that though. You don't know, like, and that's okay. It's like, it's okay. Just stay in your lane. Like it's fine. There's a piece of this industry for everybody, I think. And then when you're working at the highest level, to your point, like taking someone from, top 10% to top 5% is not by accident.
Right.
That's not just happening. There's a whole system and team. And you're right. Like, what is what natural ability is the athlete born with? Or you got a freak that's been training like at a high level for 20 years. You're gonna have it a little bit easier of a time than taking like Gen Pop to like the top 10% or whatever. That's years and time and commitment. And one thing that I think is really cool about you as well is you're a super motivational person, and that's really part of your Instagram persona as well. If you haven't followed Taylor by now, you should go follow him right now. We're 31 minutes in, and I'm insulted if you haven't gone to follow this man on Instagram. You're very motivational. You're a very inspiring person. Where does that come from in you? That like you bring that fire. So I love that about you in the sense that you have the technical components and like what you're fucking doing. It's tried, tested, and true. But you also bring in a super motivational element, and I'm wondering if that's just innate in you or something.
First and foremost, like I've just always been an energetic person, and I get asked that a lot. Like when I was at the training facility that I met you at, there was a lot of other trainers there, and it was a great group of people. And I got asked on more than one occasion, like, how do you stay motivated every day? Like, what is it? Like, kind of the same question you asked. Like, what is it? Like, what is it? Like, what keeps you inspired? And finally, like, I whittled down my answer to, because it's my job. Like, it's my job. I get paid to make sure. So there were days during that time, there was some stuff going on. Life was happening. And I'm pretty open book, transparent. There were days when I would be in my car, things going on. And I mean, literally in tears with stuff going on, like just stress, like stuff with family, kids, all this stuff. And I would literally Visine in my eyes, water like this, go kick the door and like, let's go, motherfuckers, because it's my job. Now, what is it that fuels that? Is because it's so rewarding to take somebody from, like you're saying, even if it's just a gym pop person that is out of shape and you make them more healthy, you increase the quality of their life, whether it's their relationship, whether it's they can play with their kids again, their back doesn't hurt. I've done all that stuff. Now I'm more so working with people that have already had multiple trainers and they come to me. So then it's even more of a challenge to get them to that next level. So that's when it comes into a lot of trainers know what they're doing. But how do you push to that next level? How do you get them to do that one extra rep or whatever it may be? And that's different from person to person. Because some people need complimented and like, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Some people need to be told that they're messing up. Like you've got to find what clicks with each person. The only way you can do that is by really listening, watching, being open to everything that you are studying with your client, assessing. people ask like, what test do I do? I assess every session from the start to the finish. No matter how many years I'm working with you, every session is assessed. So if you're truly doing that, you know how that person is feeling. You, for example, one day you might need me to push, go, go, go. And another day you might need to be like, hey, like, you're doing a really good job. You know, like, you're going to do it. So it's being able to read that where I find it, and there's no real story. I mean, I had, you know, a past or whatever, but it's being able to see people happy and to be able to succeed and achieve their goals is the rewarding part of the job. You know, so if I don't have that creates in me a happiness. And if I don't see that in others, then I don't enjoy my job. And I could not love my job more. Like I love what I do. So I don't really know that really answered the question, because I don't have one thing that like keeps me inspired. I mean, my main why is my son, but that doesn't make me want to motivate somebody else to do an extra rep. That's just the job. You know, that's what I'm paid to do. That's what I'm there to do. And that's what makes my job important.
Well, I think the coaching world is super fulfilling if you let it be. It's got its challenges, like dealing with people and their things and their isms and their value equations, like especially in the Gen Pop, it's a minefield of reasons why people are there. Some people are truly there to get better, get stronger. Like, you know, girls coming to me being like, "Oh, I want to do a pull up." I'm like, fucking great, let's go, you know? And then some people are there for a chat.
Yeah.
You know, some people are there because it's the 1 hour of their day that they're not sitting at their desk and not engaging with their families, like for good or it's them
and
time,
that's okay.
Right? And
that's okay. Yeah.
And that's okay. So it's identifying, I think, what people's value equation is. Like what are the combinations?
I love that. Yeah.
Right. What are the combinations of 3 ingredients that this person needs from this session? Is it affirmation, a bit of motivation, and a sweaty t-shirt? Okay, check, right? And at the same time, I think if you're staying true to, you know, your knowledge and experience, and you are helping them be progressively better, then it's fulfilling in that way.
100%.
You know, and so that training world is a really interesting one to navigate, and you learn so much about people. And I do think that some people are better at reading others than others, you know, like
absolutely. Yeah.
To excel at like being personable is a skill set in its own, and some people have varying degrees of that, because that is a huge component of what we do. I'm gonna let myself in that category as a coach. You know, I'm not working with a world champion or anything, but it's like the ability to be personable is a skill set. You know, it is a skill set, and it's one that's honed only through experience and also like desire. You have to want to do that and get up and you know, pour water in your face when you're having a hard day and leave your shit outside, walk through the door and crack on. And that
can be taught. Like, and it's one of those things that it's just like the power thing we were talking about. Like, some people are just born being very personable, but if somebody wants to learn how to do that and they commit to that, they can. It's like someone, you know, that, you know, may have like autism or something, like studying facial recognition to see how people's moods are. Like, you can learn that, and that can be taught. Some have it easier than others, just like with athletics, you know, and I think at the top of the crop, you know, a lot of it, you know, you have people like say, oh, it's just genetics. Well, genetics may get you to a certain level, but like once you're at that level, everybody there, like at this level has a genetics. How do you get to here? You know what I mean? Like, how do you get, and that's where all that comes into play. But same thing with like reading the room and all this. If somebody really commits to doing that, they can learn how to do it. Will they be the best? Maybe not, but maybe they'll be the best in something else. So this is just another attribute that they're able to add to it. So yeah. So in other words, if somebody is shy and they have trouble like doing that, like, just stop that shit and just go do it. You know what I mean? And like, if you do it and you try to read your client and you mess up, there are a lot of people out there that need trainers. You know what I mean? Like, you will find somebody else and you'll trial and error, and you will learn how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right at that, you know, get to a certain level where everyone's, let's call it, you know, the hard work over talent equation. You get to a certain level and everyone's talented, you know, and everyone's experienced, and it really does become hard work. And that looks like hard work is defined differently. It can be, you know, mental hard work. It can be physical hard work. It can just be, you know, relentless pursuit, like through trial and error. Like it's defined differently. What I'd love to touch on before we go, I want to ask you more about Bivol and the last camp and the Canelo build up and all the stuff people are really excited to hear about. But for those who have not, so the first time I met you, we were doing, it was the Operation Smile. It was a white collar kind of charity boxing match, and I was on the coaching team for my friend Remy Franklin. Shout out Remy Franklin.
Yeah, hi Remy.
And went to the Muscle Farm gym, and I was like, I'm Canadian, I'm living in LA, I'm living the dream, and I go to this gym, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, where did I just go? Like, describe to us how you got there. And give the Canadian listeners a little description of the gym, because we don't have anything like that here.
Okay, that gym, that was, I mean, the same thing. When I walked into it, I had the same reaction. So when I moved to LA, I started training people, I started training people out of the place I lived. I grew at that, got a small studio over by the Grove and Farmers Market for people. I got a small studio, outgrew it. Then I got an actual establishment that was like work in January to pay for February, because it was too expensive. I started that, and then I outgrew that, got another one. Now the other one I was in, the next step was to go like big, like facility, investors, all this stuff. And the way that I built it up was, it wasn't set up to where it could be franchised and all this, because like I was the gym. Like I had great trainers, amazing trainers, but it was just different when I wasn't there. It was really like me, and you can't copy that. So we ended up selling the gym. When we sold the gym to an incredible trainer, and he's killing it now. It's Nomad. You guys check it out. But so we sold the gym, and then I just kind of hopped around at different spots in LA. One of my guys, Alan Joban, was a UFC fighter. He told me, hey, I ran into an old buddy of mine. I guess he has this facility in Burbank. And my response was like, I don't want to go all the way to Burbank. Like, it's, you know what I mean? But we went one day, and it was literally the same. It was like 1 minute more from my place I lived to get to the Muscle Farm as it was to the gym I own. And I walked into that place, and it was just like, whoa, so I was sitting there, and like we were sitting there, and a guy came over, Ryan Drexler's owner of Muscle Farm. He came over, he was talking to Alan. We started talking, a good guy. We visited, became fast friends. I didn't know it was his place. And I was like, so like, what's the story of this place? Like, well, actually this is that. And then from there, I started there. It was me, and before me, there was one other guy, Omar Bolden, who was a Super Bowl champion. He was there training with some of his guys, just super athletic. This place is crazy. They didn't have the turf down. They had nothing. So from there, so for the Canadian listeners or anybody else, this gym, I mean, it had hot rods, like trucks, basketball court, cage. It had everything. It had the equipment. It had the turf. It was the coolest facility I've ever been in.
It was the coolest facility I've ever been to. Hands down.
And a lot of it too was the energy, like I mean, I could just riddle off all the names, but like the network
name drop
that we got. Well, as far as, I won't do the clients, but like the trainers that were there, we had Omar Bolden, Osamo J, we had John Gaines, Matt Blank, Amwala Caesar, who now is like Beachbody super all-star, like all these guys, and they're all very successful in their own round. There are many more than that. Michael Myers, there are so many. And it was a whole bunch of chiefs, or a whole bunch of chefs in one kitchen. And we all got along. We just had fun. So that was the best part of it, was the energy in that room. It was a cool spot, but after and it was cool for clients. Like if you have like a celebrity client or come in, it was very impressive. Yeah. Like, oh wow, what's it? But the second session, like it's no more. Now you're just working out. You know what I mean? So like to be there, so it was really the energy, and that's the best part from being there, because they're still open. That facility closed, but I believe they're in Vegas. I just saw them go live. I mean, much love to them. They helped us all out a lot, to Muscle Farm. But yeah, that was, I mean, the facility was phenomenal, and that's when you guys came in. And when you guys came into the thing, that was kind of like one of those random like boot camp things. You know what I mean? That was kind of a sweaty t-shirt, have a good time workout. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it was so great. It was cool. And I love what you said there too, is you can have, here's me just dropping a nugget. It's like you can have the most beautiful, ridiculous, like insane mecca facility, but without the meat of the people inside it and the let's say culture, without the culture and atmosphere, that shit fades, like wallpaper fades, sort of thing, right? And I've seen I'm comparing that to Trinity too, right? Like I used to train out in Trinity in LA, like shout out to them. And without Hino,
and Hino would come to Muscle Farm occasionally too. So many people,
Right? Shout out Hino. It's like without me hearing his voice as I'm walking down the alley, like that was it was a hot tin roof in 98 degrees with sometimes like no running water. Like I mean, it's wicked. Like it's a wicked gym, but it's like not like the nicest, but you'd get in there and there's, he'd be with Usher, some shit, but it was because of the salt of the people that were there, that the toilets weren't working. All right, cool. No one cares.
Right.
You know, so it is really about the humans and what they contribute to the culture and the atmosphere that really truly makes a place.
Oh,
right?
100%. The rest, it was decoration, and it was beautiful decoration. Like I said, it was the coolest gym ever. But like anywhere you go, you don't need anything. Like people ask me, because I do all virtual training. Unless I'm in a camp or with a project, I do everything virtually. And people say, "What equipment do I need?" I'm like, "Well, whatever you have, we'll use." Because I see it like as toys. Like they're fun. And it's good to have them because you can do more stuff, but you don't need anything. You need energy, you need proper programming, you need the motivation we talked about, and you need to want to do it. And if you don't really want to do it, you need to be able to want to at least show up, on those days. So that, like you said, like it doesn't matter the facility. It was a really cool facility though.
It was super cool.
But
no, and I think that's really interesting because like if we kind of pause and unpack the COVID situation, that affected probably both of us quite, similarly. That sort of initiated my move back to Canada. I thought it was, I'm like, okay, I'm in LA. I'm going to die in LA now. I'm here forever. Get stuck with me. And did you launch your digital platform as a result of that shift?
Yeah. So I immediately adapted and I started doing live classes, and I literally just did it via Instagram, and I had people Venmo me or PayPal. I mean, if you don't have every single app to get paid, you should download them. Like you make it easier for people to pay. So I did that, and it was a really small thing. It was just like a temporary deal because it was going to be 2 weeks or whatever it was in the beginning, So I did that, and then I started training some of my personal training clients because the time went longer. We're like, well, let's just do this. And there are pros and cons to everything, but the pros outweighed the cons so much, and now it's become such a convenient and efficient and very successful way to get people to reach their goals. All my current clients, I don't train people in person anymore unless I'm traveling, like for a fight camp or if there's a project or whatever. Like I'm in town in LA right now and I'm working with people, but literally it's great. And I mean, there, like I said, there are pros and cons to everything. So that was 2 years ago, and that's how I train everybody now. And it was all from the pandemic. I joke around. It's like if I told my clients on Friday, so here's the deal. So on Monday, I'm actually not going to come to the gym. We're just going to FaceTime. They'd be like, what? No. You know what I mean?
I know.
What?
Yeah.
But since it was necessary, and then it became normal, we were able to see like, hey, this actually works. We were able to actually give it a try, and it does. I love it. It works great.
That's interesting. I struggled with it a little bit. And I was interested to hear what your perspective was, because I think we have a similar, personality and a little bit of an energy. And I found it really hard not to be, at first it was cool and novel, right? It was novel and like, you know what, we're doing this thing despite the difficulties, we're rising above and making it happen. And you knew you were making a huge impact in people's lives because they were stuck at home and they were miserable, right? But as it went on, I'm like, man, like I really miss high fives and I want to fucking hug. And like,
yeah. No, I get it.
It was really hard, and I still think that I personally, especially with a coach, I'm the type of athlete that I want to be in front of my coach. I want to be in the gym with my coach. I want to smell the smell of the turf. I want to. And so I did find that hard, and I was curious to see how the industry would evolve, and if it would, as soon as the doors open, people would be like, well, fuck this Zoom thing, like we back, baby. And I was kind of interested. So I'm also really encouraged to hear that you've created a longevity to that platform that sort of transcended, the opening phase, because if this ever happens again, you're also, you have a system in place already, and people see a huge amount of value of it from it.
And it's not for everybody. It's not. I haven't had. I'll make sure I don't put my foot. I don't believe I've had anybody that really truly was wanting to actually train, start and not continue to do it.
That's a huge testament to you.
Well,
that's a huge testament to you. If you can keep people engaged and motivated and also progressing, without the traditional setting, that's a huge testament to you as a coach, I think.
Thank you very much. And that's also with people that vibe differently too. It's like, I mean, obviously, like if I'm in your face and you mentioned air bike sprints, like it's different, but I have people like it's all I need is to be in their ear. You know what I mean? Like if you have it set up towards the speaker, it doesn't work. Because if you're on the bike, because I have people that have full gyms, and then I have people that tour with a band where they don't have any equipment or whatever it may be. But if I'm in your ear, we're good. We're good. And there are certain things like if you're rehabbing something, a lot of the physical therapy, like the rehab exercises you can do. But if you need to be hands on, you need to go to somebody that can be hands on. You know, if you need to, if you're not to a certain level to where like certain movements, you need to be able to have somebody. And actually, that's even against the rules. Like as a personal trainer, we're not supposed to touch. Like you're not supposed to touch. I'm all over you. Like in an appropriate way, but like, you know what I mean? Like helping people move and doing stuff like manual resistance. I love, that's one of the things I miss is like, instead of having a machine or a weight, like I am the weight, like I'm holding your arm and doing that. Can't do that virtually, but there's so many things you can do virtually. Like you're going on vacation or a client is going to Paris for a month and they'd be gone. Well, I'll see you on Monday. We just change times. You know what I mean? So it's also the consistency stays there. So there, like I said, there are pros and cons to everything. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's one is better than the other. I just am grateful and blessed to have the opportunity because the clients love and the belief in me to be able to do both, you know, and I also enjoy the virtual a lot too, because I still get to travel. Like, I mean, we were in Uzbekistan for weeks, then we were in California for 6 weeks, and then we're in Vegas, like, because I get to do that too. But also while I'm in fight camp, I'm also training all my other clients just like this, you know what I mean? I mean, not just like this, but virtually. So everybody stays consistent.
That's wicked. Now, I know all the boxing fans want to hear about how did you get connected with Dmitry Bivol? What was because you've been with him for a while. Like you didn't just start before the Canelo camp. So I'd love for you to just kind of fill us in on that sort of journey and when that fight was, you know, first brought to the table and what that meant to you guys and what that still means to you for your career going forward.
Absolutely. So I first started working with Dmitry Bivol it was like 5 years ago. He was training with a colleague, Jordan. Jordan was getting ready to tour with a band. And so he called, he knew I trained fighters. This was in, I guess, 5 years ago. It would have been 2017. Yeah. So I've been training fighters at that time for like 8 years. So he reached out, super cool. And, we got connected. I started training Dmitry Bivol and his friend Sergey Kuzmin at the same time. And then from there, we just bonded and we formed a relationship and we've been kicking ass ever since. With Canelo was the 10th fight that we worked together. So, I mean, in the beginning, like in each camp is just, like I said, we've grown each camp and we'll grow the next camp. But I mean, we've had 10 fights. We've traveled. We've been to Uzbekistan just recently for this camp. The United Kingdom. I mean, we've been all over. It's been great.
Now, so 2017, I'm trying to think. Like the first time I saw Bivol fight, it was the first time I saw him fight live was at MSG, and it was the Kovalev retired that night.
I think it was the Sullivan Barrera fight, probably.
I think it was. Yeah, no, so you had been working with him at that time then.
Yeah, that was
one of the earlier.
MSG would have been our third or fourth fight, I think. Third fight. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It was earlier on, and Bivol scored a knockout, a TKO in the last round, I think, of that fight. I think if I'm talking about the right fight, yeah.
I just remember being blown away. Like, you know, he has that I want to compare him a little bit to like Ustak. You know, he's constantly moving and throwing on different angles. And I mean, he's smaller, I guess, in his weight class, but he's a big guy and like to throw strong. 4, 5, 6 punch combinations at that weight class too. Like you don't see that very often. And also his movement was just amazing. I remember at that time being like, I'm gonna watch this guy, and you know, fast forward, here we are. He's just rocketed, I think, to another level.
Oh yeah, I mean, he woke up, and I said this during camp in the interviews. Like we weren't shocked at all, and this is just confidence and belief in what we're doing. It wasn't. We knew we were gonna win, 100%. I mean, anything can happen in boxing or whatever, and like I said, and. You can go back, like Ellie Sekback, I reported that guy, like he interviewed me weeks before the fight. And like I'm quoted saying, like, people are saying, like, you're going to shock the world. Like, we're not going to be shocked. It's our job. And he is going to win the fight. And a lot of people in boxing that know Bivol weren't as shocked either. But we also knew, and we discussed it beforehand, that going into the fight, this one specifically, we had to win every single round because boxing is boxing. We knew we had to win every single round because there's a chance. I mean, Canelo's Canelo, and thank you. Nothing but respect to Canelo. Nothing but respect. The reason why we're having this conversation is because Canelo gave us that opportunity. He gave people that opportunity.
Yes.
You know, there are many other people he could have picked. He picked him. That's much respect. You know what I mean? Because he knew. I mean, he knew who Bivol was. The only reason why it's such a betting odds stuff is because nobody knew him. Bivol woke up on Sunday morning, though, a superstar, which is incredible because he's such, I mean, I love the guy. He's such a good guy, and he's earned this. Like, I'm so happy for him. But we knew going into, we had to win every single round, and in my opinion, we did. You know, and then it came back, well, like 118, 115. So it was like, when they read the scores back, even at the end, all of us were kind of like, oh no, like they're going to, you know, like, but we got it.
Well,
and so that's all that matters.
It's boxing too, right? Because you're like, okay, well, is this just going to be like a bit of a robbery? But I mean, I watched the fight, and I'm a huge Canelo fan, and he didn't just win every round; he won almost every exchange.
Yeah, it was great, and that's all Bivol. I mean, we all did our jobs leading up to it. We had him primed and ready to go. But like I said earlier on, is like when we all sit down and the bell rings, it was up to him. He had to perform under all that pressure. And the people I work with, I love seeing that because it was truly, like, I know it's a saying now, but it was, and I'm not doing it like the same, but it was really a movie, like going into this thing, like, because there was all petty stuff with the contract. Like the whole thing was Canelo-Bivol instead of Bivol-Canelo. Canelo walked out second instead of, because he was a challenger. So it was all like these little things, which is fine because it's Canelo. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's great. I mean, and he's earned all that stuff. Like, all of us have nothing but respect for it. But like, we're in the ring, the lights are off. It wasn't a big show or whatever. And then he like comes out of the floor. It's like Rocky IV, but like everything was just different countries. Like, he comes out of the floor, like fireworks, dancers, all this stuff. And that was the moment when I looked at Bivol and I watched, and I mean, I was in the ring. It's on the internet. Like, I'm yelling at him, you know, like keeping him focused, you know, this is your fucking belt, all this stuff, and keeping him going. But looking at him, I loved his expression because not a single person in that place outside of like my wife, the manager's friend, and a couple other people were there supporting. It was all Canelo fans. I mean, Vegas was just all Canelo fans and maybe a couple people, but the lights go off and like I'm watching him and he's just looking around like, you know, as opposed to looking around like in like, oh my gosh, so much pressure. I could see it in his face. He's looking and he was excited and his thought was like, wow, so many people finally get a chance to see how good I am. You know what I mean? Like that, it was just like, it was like, it gives me goosebumps, like legitimately. I love my job.
I literally,
like, and
that
was it. And it was just like, and us like talking to him in the moment, like helping him get there. But at the same time, like it's him, you know what I mean? Like he's the one doing it. He's the one that's going to be on the world screen, you know, and all this stuff. Yeah. And man, it was just out the gate. We all did our job. And like I said, at the end of the day, it was up to him and he performed immaculately. And it was incredible. It was, and at the same time, it's Canelo. So all the way through, we were winning, but it's boxing, you know, like, I don't know. It was just great. But seeing his face, and because like I said, you read your people and you know your people, and like we're like brothers at this point. We spent a lot of time together. He's like my little brother, and I saw that expression, and that's when I knew like, oh, but I knew it was his. But right then I'm like, oh man, because it was an excitement. It wasn't. It was that whole pure like in the zone thing, like looking around, everybody like booed him and all this stuff, and then also the movie part. It started out roaring for Canelo, and then it got real quiet. And we talked about this after the fight. We were in the hotel room after, and he's like, "Man, because like the fighters hear stuff," and it got really quiet. And that's whenever we knew, like, that's when he knew, like, oh, I'm really like I'm sure, like everybody's got quiet. But then, to respect to the fans, then you started like hearing like a few people, like it started turning. It wasn't exactly a movie, like people were on their hands cheering for me at the end, but there were a few. There are a few people, like he definitely won some people over. And that was also like,
oh, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, big time,
without a doubt.
And then in the elevator, like I wasn't in the Bivol gear, but I was in the elevator and it was all Canelo people, and like one of them recognized me or whatever, and they said, "Hey, congratulations." So I was just kind of like standing there, you know what I mean? And I was like, "Hey, thank you so much," and also like thank you guys. Like you guys are great fans. You guys made you guys made this fight what it was, and Canelo's your hero, and he should still be your hero. He lost a fight. You know what I mean? Like, and nothing but respect to him. And the reason why it was such a big fight is because Canelo was there. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
his stock didn't go down. He's fighting Triple G. You know what I mean? He's still driving Bugattis and all this stuff. But what happened was people got to see exactly what Bivol has been wanting. People got to see how skilled of a boxer Bivol is and what great condition he's in, and that he is definitely going to be a name that many, many people are going to know. And we wanted a big fight because now we keep getting big fights.
Exactly. It was brilliant. I mean, that was one of the first things that went through my head. You know, I think by about like I think it was the fifth or sixth round. I just said to myself, I was like, damn, Taylor, he's in great shape.
Thank you.
Like, I don't even think he opened his mouth to breathe.
Yeah, no, he was ready to go. He was ready to go. And there's
absolutely peaked.
Yeah, there's a video, and he's just a good energy. And like, we go into the backstage or whatever, and somebody asks him like, how you feeling? He's just, I'm ready. Like, you know what I mean? Just like chill. And not like too chill, like I've been talking about, but like, because when he flips that switch, like, really friendly guy and all that. But like, I say this on HBO, I don't want to be on the other end of his punches. You know what I mean? Like, you're a real nice guy, but I don't want to fight you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's good because he's somebody that people can look up to. If you haven't watched it, the post-fight press conference, nothing but respectful to the opponent. He literally dedicated the win to like kids in small towns have big dreams that like want to do this stuff. I mean, and it's all genuine. People wanted him to talk smack because that was the thing that people like kind of downplay. Oh, you don't talk enough. You don't sell it. You don't talk enough trash. He doesn't talk trash. Like, he does his talking in the ring, and he didn't change. He didn't change who he was this entire time. We had a lot of fun people from like different companies come, like fun social media pages to do interviews. And they tried to get him to say stuff, and he would just lie, and he would answer like funny, but never disrespectful. I mean, the disrespect is done in the ring whenever you don't give anybody anything they want.
Well, he didn't need to.
Right.
He beat Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah.
He didn't need to say anything. The fight spoke for itself. Yeah. And his and I remember I'll say the first time I saw him fight, I was like, this kid is special. Like, he you know what he does? He's a textbook on, like, he boxes beautifully. And he's got the right blend of aggression, but he's so technical. Yeah. His footwork, his range management. Yeah. You don't need to talk trash when you're that good.
And it's different.
You know
it's different. And what he's excited too is that people get to see his style of boxing because it's different. It's not orthodox. His coach, Gennady Mashinov, did it's like old Soviet school boxing. That he was at the Olympics and all this stuff. And like, it's what they do is he's always, you said, he's always moving. Like, a lot of times, like really orthodox boxing is like you get into position and then you like throw a punch or whatever it is. It's like his arm, he's always moving. And you could argue that both ways, but you've seen it. It's just different. And what that means is that I have to make sure that he can always move for 36 minutes, you know, if it's going 12 rounds. Yeah. And that's why I was so excited, because I knew the condition he was in. And that was the thing. Me and the manager talked beforehand, and we're like, listen, like, it's going to come down. Like, he's got the skills, you know, and that's what wins boxing is you have to be a really good boxer to box. Right. Yeah. But if you're fatigued, skills go out the window. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't keep your hands everywhere, whatever. So it was the goal was to make sure that every single round he was at 100%, so he could showcase how incredible he is at boxing. And that's what happened. So it was great.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And I mean, huge congratulations to your team and to all your hard work. And also, like, I think it's very apparent, like, what type of human he is. He seems like a genuinely like lovely individual who's about the sport and who puts in a lot of hard work. And like you said, you know, maybe his story is the reason why he dedicates it to kids in small towns with big dreams. It's, you know, that's his story.
Exactly.
You know, that's a little bit of all of our stories, I think, you know, in some ways, and well, at least the stories that I want to hear.
And if people don't believe in you too, always believe in yourself. And that was the thing he said in the post thing is like, you always have to believe in yourself. Nobody saw us winning that fight. I mean, everybody except for us, you know, and as a team, we knew it. But at the end of the day, he had to believe in himself. If he didn't believe in himself for one split second, it's done. You know what I mean? Like, he 100% believed in himself.
Yeah. Were there any like, you know, dark moments or nights or like conversations that you guys had where he was like, Coach, like, I'm scared or I'm doubtful or anything that you had to manage like that?
No, not at all. I mean, we just talk about the fact that there's no time to take rounds off. Like we're going to have to go, like just the kind of plan, but that's just, we set that out in the beginning and then we make it happen. I mean, other than that, like camp is fun. It's a lot of hard work, but you have to enjoy it. You know, like go to a food truck every Friday. Like you have to enjoy it. So the conversations a lot of times aren't about the fight. You know, it's about other things. Like because if everything is the fight, then you get burnt out. And even then, as far as like, you know, thinking about like, because some people, and there's nothing wrong with this, if it works for somebody, it's great. But some people like visualize the fight for like weeks. Like who is like Conor McGregor, like sees it all and stuff. And like,
that was my next question.
He visualizes everything. That is done, but it's not done until like right before the fight, maybe fight week or whatever. You start doing it because you're doing that for 6 or 7 weeks. You get burnt out. By the time you get in there, you're tired. You know, and again, if that's what somebody's always done, then let them do that. You know, but for him, it's like, you know, people ask, are you visualizing? He's like, no, you know, like I'm trained, like we train, we do our thing. And what we also do is we obviously have a plan, and with sparring partners and things, they change, but we need to establish our game plan and fight our fight. You know, it's not so worrying about what the other person's going to do, because if you are doing what you need to do, it's covered. You know, I mean, you always have to be ready, and obviously you study and you know what's going on or different ideas, but you have the plan. You have to then execute the plan, and then the fighter then has to go into the ring and put it all together. Because like I said, at the end of the day, I mean, that's why they're the superstar, because they get in there and they put it all on the line.
They do it. Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you? You know, what are you looking forward to? What big goals do you have for Taylor and his journey?
Right now, I've got 2 amateur Muay Thai fighters fighting on the 29th. So I'm looking forward to seeing them both win. Soon, the WBA ordered a mandatory defense for Bivol with Zurdo Ramirez. So that's all in negotiations. People ask me about it. I'm like, we won't know the business side of it. Like Vadim Kornilov is a great manager. He's doing all that stuff. So eventually we'll be in camp again. And then all of my clients that are, you know, looking towards their goals, make sure they reach those. And then the other thing I'm doing is with the virtual training is I'm starting to do a thing where I want to have it to where I can reach more of the masses, but have that energy felt. So whether that is, you know, corporations where they, you know, for their corporate wellness or whatever, have them come into a room. So I'm building stuff like that, but I've always got like 30 ideas. Maybe one of them comes to fruition. I'm ADD like crazy.
Yeah, I get it.
But my main goal is to have everybody I work with kick ass.
Yeah, wicked. I love that. It's interesting you mentioned the Ramirez fight, because I was just chatting with Julian Shua. I'm gonna have him on next week.
Great guy.
You know, oh, lovely. I mean, honestly, those years in LA were so amazing for me to be able to connect with people like yourself, and then, you know, I mean, celebrate you and everything you've done in on behalf of the coaching world and for the sport of boxing, and you know, just I think what's really cool is, you know, and this applies to Chua too. I think what's really cool is, like you were kind of saying before, is SNC and its place in boxing and mixed martial arts has sort of become become more important, and people are starting to take notice. Like, you know, back in the day, the old school was like, you know, 1,000 crunches and some weird fucking shit, and it was like literally just go till you puke, and the lids are off the garbage cans, and you know, it was kind of like just go hard for the sake of hard, you know, tons of road work. And now people are starting to see the difference in some of these athletes as we get more knowledge, and there's more, you know, there's more talent out there, and how are people getting to that next level, and SNC is getting, you know, a lot more, people are paying a lot more attention to like what's happening, what people are doing, and what really works. And I think that's so cool. So it's, you know, it's people like yourself that are pioneering that shift of sort of like, you know, younger people in the industry, like the kind of moving out of the old school, but keeping some of that nostalgia, but bringing in some of the new school and some of that education. And I think that's amazing. It'll be really interesting to see, you know, how we can impact human performance going forward in combat sport. And you know, and Shua, like again, he's like new school, right? You know, like that the old school boxing coaches are sort of, you know, making way for younger guys with newer methods and things like that. And I think that's
and that's what's cool too, is that like it used to be, you know, whenever I first started, it was like you're like, well, I've had, like I said earlier, like 10 world champions, and never had a strength and conditioning coach. Well, think about how good they would have been had they had one. Like nobody did. So now if you don't do it, I mean, and there are some coaches that do both. You know what I mean? That's great. But an athlete they need to have both, because it's also like you can't just do repetitive work over time, because you're going to have damage, and it's also just going to get dull. Because sometimes people come to me and they've never done strength and conditioning. I'm like, have you ever sparred? Like, yeah. I'm like, were you out of breath? They're like, I was like, you were conditioning. You know what I mean? Like, so it's all a big mix to it. But the way it is that we're able to put them in safe environments that they're able to replicate different movements, build their strength, build their power, velocity, all this stuff. And and we see it. I mean, that's why athletes continue to rise, and they're so incredible to watch.
Absolutely. Taylor, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and I appreciate you making time
Thank you
for
so
me
much.
and the Empire Boxing podcast.
Likewise.
And I'm going to be, I don't know if it's going to coordinate, but I'm going to be in LA in September. So if you're around, let me know. We'll connect.
Possibly. I'm back and forth a little bit, so let me know. And it is an honor. Thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate the time.
No, it's so
and
cool. I
energy.
really wanted people to meet you and chat with you and hear your story. I feel like I could talk to you for like 2 hours and unpack every aspect of Mr. Ramsdell and his journey. So maybe we'll have you back on the podcast. Yeah, that'd be
Thank
great.
you.
And
thank you very. Yeah, and I looked at the times, like the time we've been talking, and literally I looked real quick to see how long your podcasts are. And I saw a couple episodes were like an hour, and I was be honest, like, fuck. Like, we can talk for an hour, and like literally, we can talk for another hour. But let's not. Like I thought that. Like, I'm like, what am I going to talk about
I got
for an
you.
hour?
I don't know. People, I get people spitting. I don't know what it is or how, but I got it happening. Mr. Hoffar's on. Mr. Hoffar's on here too. But anyways, I think you're such an important. I think you're such an important figure in the industry. And I think what you're accomplishing is amazing. And I also know how many Bivol fans have, like, even in just my circle, everyone's talking about him now. And I remember seeing him, I think, 2017, and now where you guys are, and knowing the connection with, how you've developed him as an athlete and your journey as a coach. I just think it's a super important story to be told. And I think everyone's got to keep an eye on you and what you're doing, because it always seems to be something.
I greatly appreciate that. And like I said, Dmitry Bivol is somebody that if you have kids, they can look up to. He's a great champion. He should. I mean, I'm his coach, but I'm a fan, and so many people should be. And they're also, remember that nobody knew. Many people did, but so many more people knew who he was after he beat Canelo. So don't forget all the other people. Like, there's so many. If you follow Instagram, I have so many other people that are coming up. You know what I mean? Be their fans. Support the small guys too, because that's how they get to that level.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? I've got George Garcia, so many of these people. So, but yeah, definitely. If you haven't seen Bivol fight yet, watch him, and then watch all the other guys too on the local level. Go buy local tickets. Go support the fight game.
We lost you there for a second, just with your connection. Sorry, repeat what you just said.
Okay, I was just saying that. Yes, be a fan. Bivol is somebody that's great to look at, but also support your local fights. Go buy tickets to the local fights. Go watch the local guys, because they all start down there and they all build up, and so that's where they're growing, and that's where the support is really felt by buying a ticket. Because we go to MSG, I appreciate the support from every single person, but if that 19-year-old has his first fight and there's an extra family there, awesome. Yeah. So definitely tune into Bivol's next fight. It'll be blasted everywhere. Appreciate the support, and also check out all your local
absolutely.
fights too.
I couldn't agree more. And that's where we are as promoters. Like, we want people to support these young athletes, and part of changing the face of Canadian boxing and elevating it is also going to be connecting with athletes from America. That's our closest, biggest pool to get good sparring and good talent up into Canada, because we've got guys up here who like Dmitry Bivol. He was just the main event on our card just last Saturday, and one of his dreams would be to spar with Dmitry Bivol, of course. But we're finding a hard time getting just local Canadian talent to fight these guys and to make these matches and to elevate their career. So I think that's the next step for guys like that, is to be able to experience athletes in the American pool and the Mexican pool and things like that. So we've got our work cut out for it, but we're game as fuck, right, Matt?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I got a bunch of questions about that, but we'll get off. But like, that's amazing that you're doing that. So Empire Boxing, what is it? It's Empire. It's not Empire. It's Empire Boxing. Empire Boxing. Empire Boxing Promotions. I knew there was another word. No, that's incredible. The more good people that we can get out there promoting this sport in a good way, the better. The more champions that we haven't even met yet will become champions. You know,
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great.
So my last question for you is before y'all get too famous, y'all, just put in a good word. So maybe Bivol wants to come on the podcast one day.
I'll let him know. I'll see him tomorrow. I'll let him know I did a
like,
podcast and you guys are his fan.
Be like, yo, you know, and like, well, I think we'd end up blowing some minds, but anyways, put in a good word for old
I absolutely, I will
here.
absolutely put in a good word.
All right, cool. And we can't hear you, Matt.
You're muted.
No, you gotta come in here. He's like the Wizard of Oz. He's the man behind the curtain. Anyways,
yeah, I know.
Matt,
good.
there we go. I'm gonna let Taylor go unless you got a good question for him. Still nothing.
Still nothing.
Okay. Well, Taylor, either
it's
way,
all good.
Again, I can't thank you enough for your time, and it was super meaningful to have you on the podcast. And I wish you all the best traveling home to your family in Missouri, and we will definitely have to have you back very soon.
I'd love to. Thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Awesome.
Have a good one.
Okay, take care.
See you guys. See ya. Bye-bye.
That was another episode of Empire Boxing's podcast with none other than Taylor Ramsdell. Go follow his career because he is a very, I think he's a very cool, up-and-coming and important figure in boxing, and not just that, but the athletes he's working with. And I guess we'll see Ramirez and Bivol very soon, so we'll have lots to chat about with that. I am your host, Coach Jay, and we will see you next time.
Make sure to listen, follow, and subscribe to Empire Boxing on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.